There are people who move through the world with a quiet steadiness, as if nothing can touch them. They speak softly, hold themselves together effortlessly, and carry a calmness that feels almost unbreakable. Others look at them with admiration, assuming they are the strong ones, emotionally disciplined, endlessly composed, immune to the chaos that shakes everyone else. But what no one sees is the weight behind their stillness, the way their hands tremble only when the door is closed, the way their voice breaks only when no one is listening, the way their strength is less a blessing and more a shield they learned to lift far too early in life. And sometimes, the strongest looking person is simply the one who learned to collapse where no one can see. There is a certain stillness a person learns to wear when the world expects them to remain calm. At first, it looks like confidence, the steady breath, the controlled voice, the expression that does not flinch even when the moment trembles. People around them sense this steadiness and, without asking where it came from, begin to rely on it. Over time, the person becomes known as the dependable one, the strong one, the one who never breaks. And without ever making a promise, they begin to live inside this identity as if it were their only option. It is a strange experience to be seen as stable when stability is the very thing you struggle to hold on to, because holding yourself together is not always strength. Sometimes it is the way you avoid causing concern. Sometimes it is the fear of being misunderstood. And sometimes it is simply the habit of swallowing the tremor before anyone notices it inside your voice. People who act strong often develop a quiet choreography of hiding their internal weather. They pause before answering, making sure their tone doesn't reveal the storm. They breathe slowly, so no one hears the panic they never allow to surface. They become masters at appearing fine, even when something inside them is slowly unraveling. On the outside, they look composed, but on the inside, they live with the unspoken truth that their calmness is stitched together with threads no one has ever examined closely. When others see them handling everything with grace, admiration grows. "You're so strong," people say, unaware that the sentence feels less like a compliment and more like a quiet burden. Strong becomes a title, a role, a silent job they never applied for, but can never seem to resign from. And the moment they consider putting the mask down, something inside whispers that they will disappoint someone, or that their softness will confuse those who have only known their strength. So they keep going. They hold conversations when they are tired. They carry family tensions without sharing their own. They offer stability even when their own foundation is shaking. And because they are so good at playing the role, no one ever thinks to ask them if they are okay. The mask becomes seamless, invisible, almost natural, yet it presses against their skin with a heaviness they rarely acknowledge. In private, though, the truth emerges in small, quiet ways. Tears that come too quickly, thoughts that spiral too loudly, a sense of emptiness that arrives without warning. They collapse in the only space where they feel permitted to fall apart, behind a closed door, late at night, when the world is asleep and the performance ends. This collapse is not dramatic. It is soft, silent, almost apologetic, as if even in breaking, they do not want to disturb anyone. They fold into their own exhaustion, the way a tree bends in a storm, quietly, without demanding attention, hoping the night hides their shaking. Deep down, they wish someone would notice the subtle signs they leave behind. The voice that sounds a little too steady, the smile that lingers a second too long, the way they say, "I'm fine," with a softness that almost pleads to be heard differently. But people rarely notice, because strength, once assigned, becomes an expectation the world refuses to question, and so they continue carrying what no one sees, They continue holding themselves together because they fear what might happen if they don't, not realizing that strength, when worn as a mask, slowly becomes the very weight that brings them to their knees. The chapter ends here with the quiet truth. Some people are not strong. They are simply practiced at not falling apart where anyone can witness it. Strength, for them, was never a personality trait. It was an early assignment, quietly given, quietly accepted, quietly carried. Most people imagine strong individuals learned it through confidence or natural resilience, but their strength began long before they understood the meaning of the word. It began in the small moments of childhood, when life required more maturity than they were ready for, when they realized, far too early, that emotions were something to handle alone. In many families, a child quickly senses which feelings are welcome and which ones are inconvenient. Some children cry and are met with open arms. Others cry and are met with sighs, or silence, or a distracted, "not now." And just like that, they learn to swallow their tears before anyone has the chance to tell them their sadness is a burden. They learn to adjust their emotional volume so it doesn't echo too loudly in a home where no one seems prepared to hold it. Children are observant. They understand far more through atmosphere than through words. They notice the tension in the house, the tiredness in a parent's voice, the way conflict drains the room of warmth. So they begin to manage themselves. They learn to keep their worries small, to walk softly, to speak carefully, to solve emotional problems inside their own mind before anyone asks them to explain. These habits feel temporary at first, just a way to survive the environment. But the mind, especially a young mind, holds onto survival patterns with remarkable devotion. They grow older, but the habits follow. They learn to become easy. The child who never asks for too much. The teenager who never complains. The adult who never needs anything from anyone. And because they were rewarded for being strong and punished, directly or indirectly, for being vulnerable, strength becomes their default identity. A kind of emotional armor they never consciously chose, but one they feel safer wearing than removing. Sometimes strength is born from love, when a child sees a parent struggling and decides unconsciously to become the stable one, the helper, the emotional support. They become the grown-up, even before adulthood, carrying responsibilities that belong to someone older. They provide comfort instead of receiving it, listening instead of being listened to. Over time, they come to believe that their worth is tied to how much they can hold for others. Other times, strength is born from absence, an absent parent, an absent emotional connection, an absence of safety, an absence of being seen. In these homes, the child becomes their own comforter. They develop the belief that no one is coming, so they must learn to soothe themselves. Independence becomes their shield, not because they prefer it, but because relying on others has never been safe enough to try. And then there are the children who grew up in environments where emotions were unpredictable, where one moment was peaceful and the next moment tense, where love felt conditional, where emotional expression was met with confusion or criticism. These children learn to monitor the room before monitoring their own hearts. They adapt, they blend, they hide the parts of themselves that disrupt the fragile balance around them, and in hiding, they become strong. People who act strong in adulthood are often carrying the unhealed roles of their childhood. They don't realize they are still operating from the same emotional script they learned decades ago. The script that says, be calm, be capable, be unproblematic, be okay, even when you're not. Their strength is not arrogance. It is not confidence. It is not pride. It is the quiet memory of a time when breaking down wasn't an option. It is the muscle memory of surviving environments that offered no room for softness. And so, The person you see today, the steady one, the composed one, the one who seems naturally strong, may simply be the child who never learned what it feels like to be emotionally held. From the outside, it looks like control. On the inside, it is often a carefully regulated shutdown. The people who act strong but collapse alone are not simply good at coping. Many of them are living with nervous systems that have learned to endure more than they can safely process. Their calmness is not an absence of feeling. It is often the result of years spent suppressing emotions faster than they can surface. Psychology has a quiet name for this: emotional inhibition. Over time, a person trains themselves to avoid expressing distress, not because they lack emotion, but because they have learned that showing it leads to discomfort, either in themselves or in others. So the feeling remains, but it is hidden, trapped inside the body like a tense breath that never fully exhales. Attachment theory offers one lens into this pattern. People who become the strong one often develop what psychologists describe as avoidant or dismissive attachment styles. They may have grown up in environments where their emotional needs were met inconsistently, minimized, or quietly ignored. In response, their mind learned a simple rule: needing others feels risky, so they became self-contained, overly independent, emotionally self-sufficient on the surface. They tell themselves, "I'm fine," so often that the phrase becomes less a description and more a defense. The brain joins in this effort. When a person repeatedly pushes emotions down, the body finds ways to hold them. The stress response, those waves of adrenaline, cortisol, racing thoughts, is not meant to be a permanent state. But for someone accustomed to endurance, their nervous system may spend long stretches in quiet overdrive. On the outside, composure. On the inside, a system running at a higher speed than it admits, holding tension in the jaw, in the chest, in the stomach, in the late-night exhaustion that never feels fully rested. There is also something called hyper-independence, a psychological stance where relying on others feels almost unbearable. It is not arrogance, it is protection. When someone has been disappointed, dismissed, or emotionally neglected enough times, depending on others stops feeling like comfort and starts feeling like danger. So they develop a deep, unspoken belief: if I don't hold myself together, no one will. This belief pushes them toward silent endurance, making it easier to collapse in solitude than to risk asking for support. Cognitively, they often run on patterns of self-minimization. Their inner dialogue might sound like, "Other people have it worse," "It's not that big of a deal," or "I should be able to handle this." These statements don't heal the pain, they simply push it further underground. They give the person a sense of control while slowly increasing the emotional pressure they carry inside. Over time, this mixture, emotional suppression, hyper-independence, self-minimization, creates a split between their external identity and their internal reality. To others, they appear stable, reliable, almost immune to overwhelm. To themselves, they are quietly aware of a heaviness that doesn't leave, even on peaceful days. They feel tired for reasons they cannot fully explain. They feel numb in moments that should feel meaningful. They feel alone in rooms where everyone believes they are perfectly okay. Silent endurance also ties into the way the brain handles emotional processing. Feelings that are not expressed don't simply disappear. They linger as unfinished emotional tasks. The body keeps them as tension. The mind keeps them as recurring thoughts. And when the person is finally alone, with no one to look after, no role to play, no composure to maintain, the system releases what it has been holding back. This is why the collapse often happens at night, in private, when the performance of strength has ended and the nervous system finally stops pretending it is fine. From a psychological perspective, their breakdowns in solitude are not signs of weakness. They are delayed expressions of everything that was never allowed to surface in real time. The tears, the shaking, the exhaustion, these are the body's way of catching up to the truth. Silent endurance does not mean they feel less. Often it means they feel more than they can safely acknowledge. So when a strong person breaks down alone, it is not them failing to be who everyone thinks they are. It is the inevitable consequence of being human in a system that has been taught to act like a machine. A body can only hold so much unspoken sorrow. A mind can only silence so many unanswered needs. Eventually, even the quietest endurance asks to be heard. There is a quiet war happening inside people who act strong. It is the conflict between two truths that never seem to agree with each other, the longing to be understood and the instinct to remain untouchable. They want someone to notice their heaviness, to feel the tremble beneath their calm, to understand that their silence is not emptiness, but exhaustion. Yet at the same time, the thought of being seen too closely feels frightening, almost intrusive, like someone entering a room that has never been cleaned because no one was supposed to walk inside. On the outside, they seem comfortable with distance. On the inside, they feel it like a bruise. The hardest part is that their walls are not intentional. They do not choose to be distant. They do not wake up every day deciding to push people away. The walls were built long before they understood the meaning of boundaries. They were formed out of necessity, one quiet disappointment at a time. Over years, they learned that vulnerability can confuse people, overwhelm them, or push them away. So the safest choice was to stop opening doors. Little by little, emotional closeness became something they admired in others, but never allowed for themselves. When someone tries to get close to them, the reaction inside is complicated. A part of them softens, grateful, hopeful, almost relieved. Another part tightens, warning them to step back before they reveal too much. It's not that they don't trust the person, it's that they don't trust what will happen to themselves after they open up. They fear becoming dependent. They fear being misunderstood. They fear that once they reveal the heaviness inside, the other person will see them differently, less strong, less admirable, less in control. Even simple emotional needs feel dangerous to them. They hesitate before sending a message when they feel low. They rehearse their words before admitting something hurts. They apologize for being upset. They downplay their own feelings with phrases like, "It's nothing," or "Don't worry about it," or "I'm just tired." These are not lies. They are reflexes. Protective reflexes. The kind learned slowly in environments where being emotional felt unsafe, ignored, or punished. Inside them lives a person who wants tenderness, but is terrified of asking for it. People who act strong often don't know how to receive care. When someone offers support, they feel overwhelmed, like they need to return the favor immediately, or like accepting help makes them weak. They find it easier to carry their own weight than to risk someone misinterpreting their vulnerability. Even when someone genuinely cares, they remain hesitant, standing at the edge of the connection instead of fully stepping inside it. Their resistance is not rejection, it is fear. Fear of burdening, fear of being too much, fear of being emotionally messy in a world that praises their neatness. They also struggle with self-expectations. They believe they should be able to handle everything alone, that breaking down is something done only after the lights go off, that their value comes from how effortlessly they remain composed. This belief traps them in a loop. They want support, but the moment they feel the urge to reach out, they talk themselves out of it. I shouldn't bother anyone. It will pass. There's no point explaining, so the feelings return underground, deeper and more silent than before. This is why their internal world becomes so divided. They crave closeness but feel uneasy when someone moves too close. They want to be held, yet they freeze when someone offers their arms. They want to be understood, but they speak in half-truths that make understanding impossible. It is not hypocrisy. It is self-protection shaped by years of emotional loneliness. Their walls are not there to keep love out. They are there to keep disappointment from returning. Their distance is not coldness. It is fear wearing the mask of control. And the worst part is that even they don't always understand this contradiction inside themselves. They simply feel the discomfort, the tightening in their chest when someone finally notices them, the urge to retreat when the moment becomes emotionally intimate. People who act strong collapse alone because solitude is the only place where their walls don't have to exist. Alone, they don't have to edit their feelings. Alone, they don't have to maintain balance. Alone, they don't fear being misunderstood. Alone, they can finally become who they actually are beneath the performance. And yet, beneath all that silence lies a quiet hope that one day someone might understand their walls without demanding explanations. There is always a moment, quiet, private, almost invisible, when the mask begins to crack. For people who act strong, this moment does not arrive with dramatic force. It slips in gently, like a soft tremor beneath the floorboards. Life doesn't need to break them loudly. It only needs to nudge the one place inside them that has been holding too much for too long. And suddenly the steadiness they are known for begins to feel fragile, like glass stretched too thin. The mask never shatters in public. They ensure that. Their composure holds up around others because the performance of strength has been practiced for years. Their body knows how to straighten, how to swallow anxiety, how to force a calm tone, how to nod instead of confess. But when the door closes and the world no longer needs their reliability, something inside unclenches. The exhaustion, once silent, becomes undeniable. They feel a heaviness settling into their bones, spreading through them with a familiar ache. It begins subtly, a moment of irritability, a sigh that lingers a little too long, a quiet moment where their body feels heavier than usual. They may sit down and realize they haven't taken a deep breath in days. They may lie on their bed and feel tears forming before the first thought even appears. It is the body speaking after being muted for too long. The breaking point is rarely caused by one event. It is almost always the accumulation of tiny emotional weights, those small disappointments, the unresolved conversations, the moments they needed help but didn't ask, the days they pushed through exhaustion because someone else needed them. Each one sits quietly inside them, harmless on its own, but together they form a pressure that the heart cannot hold forever. There comes a night, there always is, when the heart whispers, "No more," and the mask loosens. Sometimes the collapse looks like tears, soft and uncontrollable, rolling down their face before they even realize they are crying. Sometimes it looks like numbness, staring at the wall in silence, unable to move, feeling disconnected from everything. Sometimes it looks like shaking hands, rapid heartbeat, a heaviness in the chest that feels impossible to name. And sometimes it looks like nothing at all, just a quiet emptiness, a sense of internal fading, as if a part of them has gone dim. This collapse feels shameful to them, even though it is simply human. They question themselves. Why am I like this? Why can't I handle it? Why does it hit me only when I'm alone? They forget that strength without softness is a cage, and that the body only collapses privately because it has learned that its feelings are not welcome anywhere else. But in these moments, something else happens too, something important, though it rarely feels that way at first. When the mask cracks, a truth slips through, a truth they have been avoiding, denying, minimizing. The truth that they are tired, that they've been carrying too much, that their quiet endurance has reached its limit. And underneath this realization comes something even deeper, the recognition of their own humanity. This moment of breaking becomes a doorway. For the first time in a long time, they see themselves without the armor, not the version they present to the world, not the strong one, not the reliable one, but the real one, the one who feels, who aches, who longs, who hurts. It is a painful moment, but also an awakening. Because once they have felt the crack, once they have seen even a glimpse of their own fragility, they cannot unsee it. And something inside them begins to whisper, not loudly, not confidently, but gently, that maybe strength is not meant to be performed. Maybe it is meant to be lived, breathed, shared. Maybe it is allowed to tremble. But for now, as the collapse washes over them in solitude, they cling to silence. They let the mask fall only in the dark. They break only in the safest hiding place they know, the space where no one can witness their trembling. They do not realize it yet, but this crack is the beginning of something, a shift, a softening, a turning point that will lead them slowly, quietly, toward a new way of being. Healing does not arrive as a sudden transformation. For people who have spent years acting strong, healing comes as a slow, unfamiliar softening, one that feels uncomfortable at first, almost wrong, as if the body isn't sure whether it is safe to let go. They have lived so long inside the discipline of holding themselves together that gentleness feels like a foreign language, and allowing themselves to be held by life, by others, by their own emotions, feels like stepping into water they have never learned to enter slowly. The first stage of healing is not courage. It is permission. Permission to feel tired without shaming themselves. Permission to acknowledge the heaviness they have mastered hiding. Permission to see their own needs without calling them too much. This permission doesn't come naturally. Their instinct is to minimize themselves, to tell their heart it's being dramatic, to dismiss their exhaustion as temporary or unimportant. But something begins shifting after the mask cracks. A softness appears, not in the world around them, but inside their own awareness. They start to notice how tightly they have been living, how much pressure they've been placing on their own chest. They begin to sense the emotional gravity of everything they've been carrying. Healing for them is not about suddenly opening up. It is about easing into the possibility of openness. It begins quietly, a moment when they choose honesty over composure with someone they trust, a moment when they allow themselves to cry without rushing to wipe the tears, a moment when they admit, even silently, this hurts more than I let myself admit. These small steps are monumental. They represent a shift from survival to self-acceptance. They represent the slow dismantling of the belief that being human is a burden, or that their feelings must remain hidden to maintain their worth. A significant part of healing is learning to tolerate vulnerability, not perform it, not dramatize it, but simply allow it. Vulnerability feels unstable to them at first, like standing without armor in a world where they've always needed protection. But slowly, they realize that vulnerability is not exposure, it is connection. It is the quiet space where the human heart recognizes itself. One of the biggest shifts occurs when they understand that allowing help does not mean they are weak. It means their humanity is awake. This awakening often happens in small, subtle interactions. A friend asking how they're really doing, a moment where someone notices their tiredness, a conversation where someone stays long enough to hear the truth. These interactions soften the rigid belief that they must handle everything alone. They begin to understand that closeness is not a threat. It is a human need. The body participates in this healing too. As emotional walls soften, the nervous system slowly begins to uncoil. Breath becomes deeper. Tension loosens. The chest no longer feels like a cramped space holding unsaid words. There is room for rest, room for gentleness, room for the quiet truth that being supported is not a failure of strength, it is the foundation of it. They learn that real strength is not a performance, it is a capacity to feel without collapsing, a capacity to bend without breaking, a capacity to rest without fear of losing everything they've worked so hard to protect. Healing also means rewriting the inner dialogue. The voice that once told them, "You're fine," evolves into a voice that asks, "What do you need?" The voice that once urged them to push through now whispers, "You're allowed to slow down." These internal shifts, though subtle, create a new emotional landscape, one where their feelings are not enemies to silence, but signals to understand. Little by little, they learn that life is not asking them to be invincible. Life is asking them to be human. And there is a profound gentleness in realizing they no longer need to carry their entire world on their own shoulders, that the walls they built can be softened, not destroyed, that they can allow others to hold them, not because they are weak, but because they deserve to feel safe. Healing is not the absence of struggle, it is the presence of softness. The quiet acceptance that their heart is allowed to be held, not only by others, but by themselves. In the end, strength and softness do not stand on opposite sides of a human life. They meet in the quiet spaces where truth finally feels safe enough to breathe. For people who have spent years acting strong, the final stage of healing is not a dramatic breakthrough. It is a gentle reunion with the parts of themselves they once abandoned. It is the moment when the heart stops performing and begins simply existing without the pressure to impress, protect, or endure. There comes a day when they sit with themselves and notice something different. Their chest feels lighter. Their breath settles more naturally. Their thoughts no longer race to hide every discomfort. It is subtle, so subtle they might miss it at first. But the inside of their life begins to feel more spacious, less like a battlefield, and more like a room they are finally allowed to rest in. They begin to understand that their softness was never a weakness. It was a language they were never taught to speak. For years, they mistook quiet suffering for emotional strength, believing that silence was a kind of nobility. But now, after everything, after the nights they collapsed behind closed doors, after the years of wearing a mask no one asked them to wear, they realized something profoundly human. The strongest parts of them were the ones that stayed soft, even when the world demanded hardness. This realization arrives like a slow sunrise. Nothing happens suddenly. No dramatic shift, no moment of triumphant clarity. Instead, there is a gradual easing, as if their heart finally trusts them enough to open. They notice that their shoulders don't stay tense all day. They notice that they no longer rehearse their emotions before sharing them. They notice that closeness feels a little less dangerous, a little more possible. And in this softening, something beautiful happens. They learn to be gentle with themselves. They stop criticizing the parts of them that need rest. They stop rushing to fix their emotions before anyone can see them. They stop hiding behind "I'm fine," allowing the truth to take up small spaces in their conversations. They do not pour their entire heart out. This is not a dramatic confession, but they begin to allow pieces of themselves to be visible. Pieces that were once buried under years of being the strong one. This is the quiet revolution. Strength no longer means control. It means honesty. It means being able to sit with their pain without shaming it. It means letting someone see the tiredness behind their eyes without feeling embarrassed. It means trusting that softness will not ruin them. And when they look at their own reflection, emotionally, not physically, they begin to see someone new, someone real, someone they have not seen in years. A person who is allowed to need things, to feel deeply, to ask for comfort, to rest. Someone who is allowed to be held. The people who once broke only in solitude now find that the world doesn't collapse when they show a glimpse of their vulnerability. Instead, something else happens. Closeness enters. Understanding grows. Connection deepens. They begin to experience a kind of intimacy that was never possible behind the mask. The intimacy of being seen without, performing, cared for without earning, understood without explaining. They discover that life has always had a softness waiting for them. The world was never asking them to be unbreakable. It was waiting for them to stop carrying everything alone. As they step into this new way of being, the old armor does not disappear. It simply grows lighter. It becomes something they can choose, not something they are chained to. They learn to move between strength and softness with fluidity, understanding that both are needed, both are human, both are worthy. And when the night comes, the same night that once held their deepest collapses, they no longer fall apart alone. They no longer fear the tremble inside their chest. They no longer hide their heart from themselves. Instead, they sit with their feelings, letting them move with the gentle rhythm of someone who has learned that survival is not the same as living. They breathe into the quiet truth that has been waiting for them all along. They were never meant to carry their world alone. They were meant to feel it, soften with it, grow inside it. Strength may have been their armor, but softness becomes their home.